Let's talk about it. Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. That is what Donald Trump put forward just as yesterday's show was getting finished up. And so as I promised, we're gonna dive into it. Because this was an absolute bombshell of an announcement, just objectively, right? People on both sides of the aisle were completely stunned, with this selection being described as easily the most controversial of all of Trump's picks thus far. Though, I would stress, so far. Every hour or so, I hop onto the internet. I'm like, did he nominate Godzilla to head housing and urban development? Oh wow, he nominated Thanos for Secretary of Health and Human Services. But where I'll start with this Gaetz situation is just, first of all, the person selected to lead the Department of Justice is usually just way more senior and well-versed in the law. And the same was true for Trump's past appointees, right? Jeff Sessions had a deep background in administrative law, serving as a U.S. attorney for Alabama and as the state's attorney general. Also, Bill Barr had literally already been the AG under Bush Sr. And actually, while he was the same age as Gaetz when he was selected for his first term, at that point, he had already had an extensive law career and held numerous posts in the DOJ. But Gaetz, his actual only law experience is working in a firm for a few years before being elected to the Florida House of Representatives and then Congress. But then also beyond that, right, Gaetz has been, I mean, this is even putting it lightly, has been an incredibly controversial figure even among his own party. Right, for years, he was under investigation by the same agency he's now been tapped to lead based on suspicion of child sex trafficking. Right, with that investigation focused on his alleged involvement with a 17-year-old girl, whether he paid her for sex, and whether he had paid women to travel across state lines for sex. And while the DOJ eventually closed its investigation without bringing any charges, the House Ethics Committee opened its own inquiry into the matter. And that's in addition to accusations of illegal drug use and accepting improper gifts. But very notably there, Gaetz has now thrown a wrench into that investigation because he immediately resigned from Congress after Trump announced him as the pick for Attorney General. A move that's been seen as super significant as well as unusual, right? Because normally sitting officials wait to resign from their current post until after they're confirmed for their new appointment, which usually makes sense because if your nomination gets blocked, boom, you still have a job. But for Gaetz, you have people saying the reasons to resign now, they're more compelling, with people pointing out that ethics investigations typically end when the member being investigated leaves Congress, so he has effectively shut down the House's probe. And the timing of all this really could not have been better, right? According to reports, his resignation comes literally just 2 days before the House panel was set to vote on whether to release their report into Gaetz. And right now, it remains unclear if that report will even be released. And one of the committee's leaders saying they won't rush to get the report out. But then also, Gaetz's resignation, it has another impact here, right? Because yesterday, as expected, Republicans officially won the House, reaching the 218 threshold needed to take the majority. But that 218 figure includes Gaetz's seat, which he has now given up. So technically speaking, at least for now, they haven't actually won the House yet. But, and I cannot emphasize this enough, I'm saying technically because one, they're expected to pick up more than one additional seat from the 8 races that remain uncalled. And two, while it will take a minute to fill Gaetz's seat, his district is one of the most Republican in the country, right? So there's no possibility that one's gonna get flipped. And then actually 3, Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries has already conceded that his party doesn't have the numbers to take the House. But going back to the main story at hand, right? The various investigations into Gaetz, they're also not the only controversies that he's faced. But he's also been accused of showing photos of naked women to colleagues on the House floor and preemptively seeking a pardon from Trump before the DOJ's sex trafficking investigation ended, though notably he has denied all those various claims. He's also falsely claimed that Antifa was behind January 6th, but then also defended the actions of Trump's supporters that day. And then there's more, I'm not gonna touch on everything, I don't wanna get stuck in the weeds, but it's also been widely reported that Gaetz is disliked by many of his Republican colleagues, and his inflammatory approach to politics has actively made him many enemies within his own party, especially after he led the charge to oust Kevin McCarthy as Speaker last year. But, with all this, like we've seen with many of the other nominees that Trump has picked, the main thing that seems to matter is loyalty, right? And specifically loyalty to Trump, especially because Attorney General is one of the single most high-profile appointments in any cabinet. And Gaetz, I mean, he has loyalty in spades. He has always had unwavering fealty for Trump, acting as one of his most fervent supporters and champions in the House, right? And one of the ways that's been on display is that he's echoed many of Trump's complaints about the DOJ being weaponized as a political tool against Trump. And in fact, along with repeatedly calling for defunding or abolishing the FBI, which is part of the DOJ, at least once he called for the DOJ itself to be abolished. But then some and or all of that combining into, Gaetz's confirmation not being an assured thing. Though also understand I say that, as I mentioned yesterday, and I will continue to say, we are in a time of anything is possible, good or bad. But why this might not work out for him is that numerous Republicans have already spoken out against his appointment. That including some who are on the outs of Trump, like Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, who called him the worst nomination for a cabinet position in American history. And many Republican officials, strategists, and even Trump advisors have said they don't think he can get enough votes to be confirmed by the Senate. Right? And this is his confirmation will require either a simple majority or 50 of the 53 Republican senators plus the tie-breaking vote of the vice president. Though it's unclear right now if he could get that. Right? Key Republican senators have raised question, or we're seeing folks like Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski saying Gaetz is not a serious candidate, and then saying, if I wanted to make a joke, maybe I would say now I'm waiting for George Santos to be named. Meanwhile, others have spoken less definitively, like Senator Susan Collins, who said that she was shocked by the selection. Also Senator Joni Ernst saying Gaetz has got his work really cut out for him to get confirmed. And so ultimately what we're gonna see play out here is like one of the biggest loyalty loyalty test regarding the Republican-led Senate. And actually, to that point, Gaetz isn't the only appointment that'll test those limits. Well, obviously, each person in each position is going to be different. The same goes for Pete Hegseth, the Fox News host who Trump tapped to lead the Pentagon, with the people who were concerned there saying he just doesn't have the experience to lead the department. You also have people out there who have serious concerns about Tulsi Gabbard, with Trump announcing yesterday that he picked her as the director of national intelligence. Because critics say she has zero direct experience in intelligence, but also due to the fact that many believe she is sympathetic to Putin. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Senate Majority Leader John Thune, as well as the rest of the Republicans, do here. Right? Especially because, as we mentioned yesterday, if the Senate blocks any of Trump's nominations, it appears that he might try to get them through unilaterally. Because technically, the president can appoint his own nominees without approval when the Senate is in recess. And Trump has made it very clear that he expects the new Majority Leader to allow him to make recess appointments. But for some, it seems like Gaetz might already be losing the title of most controversial appointment so far, because as I was finishing up today's show, Donald Trump has officially announced that he's tapped RFK Jr. for Secretary of Health and Human Services. So I guess my condolences to Thanos, though there still may be another spot for you. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this clip from the full Philip DeFranco show. And also, a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring our Clips channel. Turn your passion into profit over at squarespace.com/Phil, or use the QR code. Because whether you're launching a business or a lucrative side hustle, your website is your digital business card. It's the only space where you control the story, no algorithms or distractions. And with Squarespace, it's so easy because they got a ton of stunning professional templates with drag and drop editing that makes site design incredibly simple, no coding required. So get started for free at squarespace.com/Phil, or scan the QR code on screen and use code Phil for 10% off when ready to launch. Squarespace.com/Phil.